Okay, one more for good measure. We had ourselves news earlier today that the Vancouver Canucks had put Carson Soucy on the IR and recalled defenseman Jett Woo from the Abbotsford's AHL Canucks team. Now, as I had said, this was from 9:30 a.m. in the morning, so like an entire shift to go, pretty much. But I did think it would be interesting to go out there and talk about not only this news on defensemen on the team, but also talk about the Canucks and defensemen that are not on the team that they've also been linked to. Now, first things first, talking about Jett Woo, the first reply is the Ric Flair "Woo!" comment. So great to see Canucks fans having a sense of humor about this, but when it comes to the situation, you could see the Jeff Patterson tweet that talks about it. Just to be clear, Carson Soucy was never placed on the IR with his latest injury, so he was always on the active roster despite being hurt. To get Woo into the NHL, the Canucks had to create a roster spot. That's why Soucy went on IR today. Now, Carson Soucy, of course, we recognize he hasn't played for a bit. He also got injured earlier in the season, but when he has been in the lineup, the Canucks have been very good. Jett Woo, on the other hand, has been in a pretty interesting spot the past few years. Initially a second-round pick by the Canucks in 2018, the 6 feet 205 right-handed defenseman was known primarily for his physical play, especially with his size. He's only 6 feet, but he played like he was 6'5", and he wasn't afraid to get physical and absolutely layeth the smacked down on other players. This was something that made him such a commodity in the 2018 draft, even though he was taken in the 37th overall spot. Take a look at the rankings back in the day. He was ranked 26th by Future Considerations. He was the 28th North American skater by NHL Central Scouting. There were a lot of people saying that Woo could very well be a first-round caliber defenseman, but he slipped to Vancouver in round 2. Eventually, he played with the Utica Comets and the Abbotsford Canucks. He didn't really break out offensively until last season, getting 21 points in 68 games played, and this year he's at 16 points in 42 games played. There was sort of a stagnation of Woo's development. He didn't really become any sort of a point producer at the next level. I mean, he had 66 points in 62 games played, a point-per-game defenseman the year after he got drafted, so this is kind of when a lot of Canucks fans, myself included, were getting super hyped up about Woo and his profile. But he's been a pro, he's been a guy suiting up in Abbotsford the past few years, so now he's getting rewarded with some time with the main NHL club. Whether or not he actually sticks around to play any minutes, that remains to be seen, because right now, with Soucy out, you've got Mark Friedman playing in that extra spot. Jett Woo will likely be in the press box, suiting up in practices and getting NHL salary. So for the first time ever, I mean, it's good to see Jett Woo getting that $775,000 contract money for the few weeks or days that he's going to be a part of the main Vancouver Canucks squad. I'll admit, if he actually does end up suiting in a game, then I'd be pretty surprised. Of course, that's without the idea of injuries coming into a factor. If there's another Canuck that gets injured, knock on wood, that doesn't happen, then of course you're probably going to see Woo getting some playing time, but still, Jett Woo is up with the team. I thought this was interesting to go out there and talk about, but what I also thought was interesting to bring up was this very same article that we've been referring to over the past few days, because on February 9th, 2024, you had David Pagnotta asking the question whether or not the New Jersey Devils are going all in on Jacob Markstrom. Now, we did just make a video earlier today on the channel talking about the Devils and Markey, so go ahead and check out, where is it? Here it is. So we just made this video talking about Jacob Markstrom and the New Jersey Devils, so check that out if you're interested. But in this same piece on thefourthperiod.com, if you scroll down onto the Here and There section, which talks about extra tidbits of information around the NHL, Pagnotta writes that Vancouver Canucks GM Patrick Allvin and Philadelphia Flyers GM Danny Briere spoke again this week. The specifics are not known, to me anyway, but the belief here is that the Vancouver Canucks conversation centered around Philly's defensemen, Rasmus Ristolainen, Sean Walker, and Nick Seeler. Now, we'd already made another video talking about Rasmus Ristolainen and how some were believing that the Vancouver Canucks had him on their crosshairs. But when talking about Sean Walker as well as Nick Seeler, these are two other guys that could provide some good value if the Canucks were to go out there and seek them in a trade. Now, for Ristolainen, he's making $5.1 million a year till the end of 2027. You'd hopefully want to see some salary retained on that. We already heard some rumors, I believe, that the Flyers would be interested in doing that, depending on the price. But Ristolainen, former 40-point guy, former guy in the Buffalo Sabres system that was admittedly pretty consistent with his point production. I mean, 4 straight 40-point years, whilst not providing the best defensive play. Ristolainen this season has 4 points in 31 games with the Philadelphia Flyers. Definitely not the same offensive output that he has had in the past. And of course, with the acquisition of Jamie Drysdale, that production rate is going to get even worse because the ice time is going to be mostly given to him in the offensive zone. But aside from Ristolainen, there are 2 other guys here that are mentioned. Sean Walker and Nick Seeler are both shot-blocking beasts, and if you're a fan of Chris Tanev and the blocking style that he's developed over the years, guess what? Nick Seeler is one of the only guys in the NHL this season who can match Tanev when it comes to that overall shot-blocking capability. So Seeler this season, he's only got 8 points in 53 games played, but he is one of the top shot blockers in the NHL. He is such a brute force out there. 30 years old, 6'2", 201, left-handed D, only making $775,000 till the end of the year. This could be such a huge cap acquisition if he's able to provide the same level of effectiveness on a Vancouver Canucks team as he has with the Philadelphia Flyers. He played 77 games last year, and he's got all games played so far for Philadelphia this year, and he's only making $775,000. I personally am a big fan of Nick Seeler because I'm a fan of shot blocks, so this is the kind of defensive shutdown guy that could potentially make things work. He's left-handed, so if you wanted to replace Soucy flat out, this guy could be the guy. Meanwhile, if you want more offense, hey, guess what? Sean Walker, right-handed defenseman, 29 years old. He's making a little bit more at $2.6 million per season, signed till the end of this year at 29 years old. And he's got 19 points in 53 games played this season with the Flyers. He's on pace for about 30 on the year, which would be a career high. He had 24 points in 70 games played with the LA Kings a few seasons ago, but for the most part, Sean Walker has been more of an offensive guy. Again, the same situation with Jamie Drysdale brings itself up. Right-handed defenseman, middle-aged guy, getting a role offensively with the team that's probably going to be reduced as Jamie Drysdale becomes more comfortable with his spot in the lineup. So for any one of these 3 guys, Ristolainen, Walker, or Nick Seeler, the Vancouver Canucks are, according to David Pagnotta, talking about them. There's a conversation centered from Vancouver and Philadelphia on these 3 defensemen. So, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about Ristolainen, Seeler, or Walker being a target for Vancouver? Out of these 3, if you had to choose one, who do you think is the guy you go after the most? Ristolainen, I feel, is probably going to have the least amount of eyes on that conversation. Mostly because, I mean, he's a big dude, he's a clunky skater, he doesn't really produce offense anymore, and there's just a reputation that Ristolainen has that's very not good. Like, you talk about the Tyler Myers of the world, Ristolainen is kind of seen by some in that same light, and he's by far the most expensive. Sean Walker is the most offensively capable of the 3, Nick Seeler is the best defensive shutdown guy with the shot blocking, and he also has the best contract. So for me, my money's honestly on Seeler. I'm a very big fan of this guy, but if you're a fan of anybody else, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. What are your opinions on these 3 Flyers defensemen, as well as the news today that Patrick Allvin has called up Jett Woo and sent Carlsson to the IR. Thoughts on all this movement on the Canucks blue line? What are your thoughts on what they're going to do next? I'll leave a link in the description as well if you want to go ahead and read the article wherein we pulled the Flyers defenseman info from. But I hope you enjoyed this video, and bye.